Have you ever stopped to think about what really connects a Roman legionary to a medieval knight? We tend to see this huge gap between the ancient world and the Middle Ages, right? But what if I told you it wasn't a break at all? What if it was a deep, continuous evolution? Today, we're going to dig into the evidence for an unbroken chain of military and spiritual tradition that links them. Let's trace this hidden lineage.
So, this is the big question, isn't it? Was the rise of the knight just some historical coincidence, or does it actually represent a direct inheritance from the Roman soldier? We're going to challenge that standard story of a clean break between pagan Rome and Christian Europe. Instead, we'll see if there's a profound, unbroken continuity of spirit. All right, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the spirit of the Roman soldier, then dive deep into the secret cult that shaped it. After that, we'll track how Christianity transformed it, see how that forged the medieval knight, and finally, we'll look at the incredible legacy of this warrior saint tradition.
So here's the core idea, and this is backed by a ton of academic research. The shift from the Roman foot soldier, the miles, to the mounted knight, the eques, wasn't a replacement. Think of it more like a profound mutation, a transformation of both military spirit and religious identity. And its roots, they're in a really mysterious and powerful cult.
And that cult was Mithraism. Now, it started in Persia, but the Roman legions completely made it their own. See, unlike the official state religion, Mithraism offered something deeply personal. It gave soldiers a real path to salvation, a clear structure that felt just like military life, and this unbreakable bond with your fellow soldiers. It gave their often brutal world a real sense of meaning.
To really get its influence, we have to go inside the cult. We need to look at its hierarchy, its secret rituals, and the sacred spaces they used. Because this, right here, is where we find the original blueprint for the medieval knight.
You see, Mithraism was just perfect for a Roman soldier. It wasn't just a religion, it was kind of like an operating system for a warrior. It gave you personal meaning, a chain of command you already understood, a band of brothers you would literally trust with your life, a moral compass for the chaos of battle, and yeah, it was an exclusively male space that made being a warrior feel sacred.
And this table just lays it all out beautifully. The initiation was this 7-step ladder, a whole cosmic journey. Each level was tied to a planet and a new degree of responsibility, which, perfectly mirrored the army's own structure. And look right there. And number 3, Miles, soldier. This wasn't just your job anymore, it was a sacred calling. You were a fighter in a cosmic war between light and darkness. And at the very top, the pater, the father. He was basically the spiritual general of his unit.
And where they worshipped, these places called Mithraea, is just as revealing. They were small, they were secret, often built underground, and always right next to military forts. They weren't huge public temples. They were intimate cells for a tight-knit brotherhood of maybe 20 or 30 guys. This whole setup, a small, loyal, professional group in their own dedicated space, is the direct ancestor of the commanderies of the medieval military orders. It's the same model.
Okay, and this brings us to the most crucial part of the story, the transition. Because as Christianity started to take over, it didn't just wipe these powerful structures away. No, it did something much smarter. It absorbed them and repurposed them.
It all starts with the oath, the sacramentum. Now, for a regular Roman soldier, this was a legal and religious vow of loyalty to the emperor. But Mithraism took that idea and completely supercharged it. The oath became a sacred, unbreakable vow, not to a man, but to a god. It was a commitment that changed who you were. And the name they used says it all. Initiates were called syndikoi, which literally means those who join by the right hand. This act, clasping hands, sealed a vow of absolute loyalty. It created this deep personal bond that is the direct forerunner of a feudal vassal's oath to his lord. It's the same fundamental act.
I mean, just look at the rituals side by side. The parallels are just staggering. Mithraic purification by water, that becomes the knight's ceremonial bath. The all-night vigil in a dark Mithraeum, that becomes the knight's prayer vigil in a chapel. The oath, the sacred meal, the marking of the initiate, every single key element has a direct counterpart. This wasn't replacement, it was a rebranding.
Now, the key that unlocks this whole transition is a figure called Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. By the late Roman Empire, Mithras was basically seen as the same god. And his birthday? It was celebrated on December 25th, the winter solstice. The symbolic moment that the light begins its triumph over the darkness.
So what does the early Christian church do with this incredibly popular, powerful military sun god holiday? It adopts it. The birth of Mithras becomes the birth of Christ, who gets recast as the Son of Justice. For the average legionary, this isn't some shocking break from tradition. Their divine, unconquered son was just promoted. It was a transfer of the exact same core idea.
And this all leads to a brand new identity, the Miles Christi, the soldier of Christ. Now that term started out as just a metaphor for fighting sin, but with this Mithraic DNA now in the system, it became literal. The Roman soldier wasn't just fighting for the emperor anymore, he was a soldier in Christ's army. And war itself could now be seen as a sacred duty.
So how does all this come together? We've laid all the spiritual groundwork. Now let's watch the forging of the final product, the figure that comes to define the entire Middle Ages, the knight.
This table really just sums up the entire evolution perfectly. You can literally track the changes. You see the tactics shift from infantry to elite cavalry. You see the religious focus move from the public state gods to the personal warrior god Mithras, and then to Christ. And you see the social status go from a citizen soldier to a professional elite, and finally to this noble and spiritual warrior class. And the horse, which was a huge symbol in Mithraism, becomes absolutely central to the knight.
And if you want to see the ultimate expression of this Mithraic legacy, you just have to look at the military orders, especially the Knights Templar. I mean, their official title was the Militia of Christ. It's right there. They had a strict hierarchy, led by a Grand Master, a direct parallel to the Mithraic Pater. They rejected personal property for the good of the brotherhood, and they saw themselves as the guardians of Christendom's borders, inheriting that us versus them mindset from the old Roman frontiers.
So, finally, what's the lasting legacy of this whole 1,000-year evolution? Well, it's an ideal of the warrior that fuses duty, faith, and honor. An ideal that, honestly, still resonates with us today.
The core value of honor was carried forward, but it was transformed. Mithraic honor, that absolute loyalty to your oath and your brothers, it merged with Christian ideas of integrity to create the sacred code of chivalry. The legionary's duty to die for his eagle standard becomes the knight's sacred reverence for his own coat of arms. It's the same impulse, just in new clothes.
So, in the end, the medieval knight isn't some new invention that appeared out of nowhere. He is a powerful synthesis. He carries inside him the discipline of a Roman legionary, the mystical warrior spirit of Persia Mithraism, and the theology of a devout Christian. It is a direct 1,000-year evolution that really proves history is often less about clean breaks and much more about continuous, fascinating transformation.
And that leaves us with one final thought. This chain, from legionary to knight, was basically hidden in plain sight for centuries. So what other deep historical currents, what other unbroken chains from the ancient world are still flowing just beneath the surface, shaping our institutions, our values, and maybe even who we are today?